So this is the KhoodeelaarTV television channel, part A, coming from London in the UK. UK is of course spelled within quotation marks. Quotation marks because of the increasing trend that the UK will be broken up by Boris Johnson peddling the internal racist contempt for Scotland and the people of Northern Ireland. So that is the reason why we call it the UK within quotation marks, because it is not acceptable and it's not accepted by the evidence that it is a voluntary alignment or alliance or association or federation. So this is the front page of The Guardian today, which is making an exception. I mean, actually calling them Tory MPs, and it's following that by reporting accusations against them. And the accusations against the Conservatives in this particular story is about education, so-called. Now, our definition of education means that we don't believe that there is any education program ongoing in Britain or has been in Britain. What the most we can accept on the evidence is the indoctrination, brainwashing, and denials and lying, and we'll come to that detailed kind of area in due course. And there are three items on the main page, three items that are not just being flagged, but actually accompanying the headlines are being followed by contents underneath the headings. So one is the Brexit blow for British television as EU cuts airtime. And the second one is, of course, television farm protected executive after sexual assault. And the main leading story on the page one of The Guardian today is not based on anything political being said or represented or advocated or demanded by the so-called Labour Party, the numerically the second biggest party after the Conservatives in the UK House of Commons, which absence of intervention and advocacy justifies our calling for the organization of a new party, because we believe that Keir Starmer, the current so-called leader in the House of Commons, has politically murdered the Labour Party. And by political murder, we of course mean the evidence of the absence of political interventions against the Conservatives' criminal cabal fronted by the congenital liar, Boris Johnson. The congenital liar is the two-word phrase used by the woman who was the French ambassador to the UK until recently. And she gave an interview to the Times in which she said, to the Times kind of reporter, that, of course, Boris Johnson is a congenital liar. Now, today we have got 2 copies of the same Financial Times, which means we have paid for 2 copies, whereas 1 copy should have been enough. So, UK price is £2.90. So, we've paid the price twice. And there are 3 banner items on the front page of the Financial Crimes today. And again, we call it Financial Crimes because it doesn't report. It has never reported in the entire history since it became or came into being. The Financial Crimes never told the truth about the big business robbery and the big business control of the so-called UK government. And the nearest it comes to reporting what is going on in the corruption and criminality in the financial and business fields is after the event. The Financial Crimes has never actually implied, let alone expressly indicate, any of the big disasters of the corrupt economic system. To call it capitalism is itself corrupt and a corruption, because the crooks are all over the place and they're behaving in the least ethical way. Whatever they can grab, whoever they can rob, whatever they can loot, they're doing it. And the Financial Crimes, supposed to be the restrained pink one, as they call it colloquially, has failed to tell the truth. And an illustration of the fact that the Financial Crimes is perpetrating the agenda of the financial criminals and big business is to be found in the fact that Claude Coburn, now it needs explaining the spelling. It's an Irish name. Claude is C-L-A-U-D, Claude. Coburn is Cockburn, C-O-C-K-B-U-R-N, but it's pronounced Coburn. Claude Coburn was a sort of investigative kind of semi-ethical reporter journalist in the 1930s. And he set up this the Week newspaper called Week. It wasn't anything like the kind of flashy size or shape or color of the likes of the Daily Star and the Scum and the Mail or whatever that are available today, these days. That was actually very unglamorous and not noisy at all in terms of the appearance, the get-up and the size or the circulation. Coburn's Week specialized in publishing what can be called these days leaked items, leaked from the UK central government departments. Now remember, it was the late 1930s. So what was happening was a lot of the content that he published were available to him by unnamed sources in what is called Whitehall, the UK central government department. Whitehall in Calcutta or Kolkata in West Bengal is kind of A kind of Whitehall is available in called Writers Building. In Calcutta or Kolkata, the West Bengal provincial, quote, civil servants are mainly identified as being based at a building or building complex called the Writers Building. From the outside, if you pass by, you cannot see anything remarkable. So in Whitehall, actually, there is a street in central London, in Charing Cross, Trafalgar Square, called Whitehall. Now, Whitehall Street, Whitehall Road, whatever, it's one road or one street, but it is the name, collective name of all the neighboring streets where UK central government departments have been traditionally based. It's like Fleet Street. Fleet Street has hardly any newspapers. Offices located in the Fleet Street itself, but the collective name Fleet Street is now the name of the collective papers like this one, Financial Crimes, and this one, which actually did have the office when it was launched in the 1970s in Fleet Street, when I actually organized physically demonstration against its racist policies at the time. And the policies that I organized the demonstrations over or against, or the racist coverage focusing on the Bangladeshi family called Abdul, who had several children and was in need of social housing, what is called council housing. And this man Abdul was targeted by the Daily Star as it was published. And they accused him of demanding a bigger house, council house, so that his big family could live in. Now, according to the law and according to the basic common sense and common law, he was entitled to make that particular point. But he's being legally entitled, and on the facts being entitled to demand a proper housing, decent housing for himself and his family, was turned upside down by the racist Star, which accused him of making too many demands. And he became then a kind of template, a symbol of the migrants making too much demand on the social resources. All of that was absolutely untrue. And so I organized the demonstration in Fleet Street. And because of my campaign on that one, this racist scar left the family alone. And it didn't mount another similar attack on any other Bangladeshi or Asian or black family in that context. I've done the same thing, similar things against the Murdoch, dirty digger Murdoch's scum. And my demonstration against the scum took place during the scum's office being located in Tower Hamlets in Wapping in the 1980s. And the scum had actually found the one of the racist kind of stories that the scum was running at the time was supported by an apparent Bangladeshi young member of the Bangladeshi kind of origin who lived in Islington. And they quoted that alleged Bangladeshi making a series of stupid, incoherent, ill-informed, ignorant comments. And the comments were supposed to be against those who complain against racism. That was in the 1980s. So when I stood with the banner placard on the Wapping High Street, where the scum was based. Within minutes of my arrival there, with a placard and other literature condemning the scum for its fomenting and inciting racism, racist hatred, and stupidity. Because racist hatred and racism and incitement always are based on ignorance. Literally, basic ignorance of the facts. So within minutes of my arrival there, an expensive car carrying a group of white thugs came out of the building of the Murdoch scum and sped past me. It was at a speed of 100 miles or something. So whatever they were saying something, couldn't be recognized as ordinarily understandable words. But they did do that. They did do that in order to intimidate me. Now, that was not the only occasion. I mean, I've been the demonstrator for a very long time, and this is just a typical sample. Point is that when they say that there is no racism in Fleet Street, because the Society of Editors, so-called, issued a statement after the Boris Johnson-fronted cabal issued one of many denials of racism. And the majority of the people campaigning against racism, or majority of the people being aware of the existence of racism in this country, were condemning Boris Johnson's then latest kind of bid. And many sources, many organizations issued comments and statements saying that Johnson was misleading and was guilty of issuing a racist, ignorant, idiotic denial. So instead of examining the evidence, instead of reporting the facts, a previously unheard of outlet called the Society of Editors, which is a society, an association and a list of editors of mainly Little England newspapers, mainly Fleet Street, issued their statement supporting the racist stance of Boris Johnson. So the outlet that they were extensively reported by is a thing called Press Gazette, pressgazette.co.uk, but it is actually based on the name of the journal that was first published about 50 or 60 years ago. And in the 70s, I had a lot of contributions in it. And then I have now posted quite a few, condemning some of the ones that are most outrageously untruthful. And based on the contents of the Press Gazette, which is supposed to be the so-called industry magazine for the newspapers, for the Fleet Street and others, it is quite clear that Fleet Street is racist, and so is the rest of the media in Britain. Because not just the center right or far right of the media, but the so-called center left of the media is ignorant. Even the ones, the outlets that is, that claim to be against racism of the center right and the centrist outlets in Britain. We shall come to further details in the next part, because we have to come to an end and bring an end to this one. This part This is part A, and part B will definitely follow not long after now. This is 12:30.